What's up, everybody? We're here on FreeCodeCamp.org for another daily code challenge, September 15th, 2025. It was thermostat adjuster. Given the current temperature of a room and a target temperature, return a string indicating how to adjust the room temperature based on these constraints. Return heat if the current temperature is below the target. Return cool if the current temperature is above the target. And return hold if the current temperature is equal to the target. So, what do you think we should do? The way the requirements read, it would make sense if we just look at what happens when the temperature in the room is less than the target. We want to return heat, and just can like follow the constraints. And I'll do it like I would imagine a more beginner would do it, because this seems like a beginner challenge. So we do, if temperature is less than the target, return heat, else if the temperature is greater than the target, we return cool, else we return hold. And that seems pretty reasonable. And I believe this is the solution. Okay, cool. But we can make it better, because these else statements are pretty unnecessary. We don't need to have strict if-else for this problem. That's because there are really only three ways this can go. If temp is less than, greater than, or equal. The only other way we could get anything else is if one of these is not a number, or there's some issue with the data coming into this function. Otherwise, this is really all we need, and this is very simple. I would say this is pretty readable. There's no problem with this solution. But we could go deeper. And I think what you'll find, especially when you start using ternary statements, is that you'll think, like I do, this is a little bit more readable. It takes up less space in the code file. It's not so much for the eyes, it's not so spread out. It's really condensed and concise. And what's going on here is that we have a first ternary condition. And if that's true, here's the true condition. We return heat if the temp is less than the target. And then the rest of it is the false condition for this first conditional. We have a second conditional in the false condition of the first one. That is the opposite. If temp is greater than the target, that means we need to return cool. Here's the true condition for the second conditional. And then finally, if neither of these are true, we return false. We return hold in the false condition. That's effectively the same thing as our two if statements and the return for hold. And this is a possible solution too. And there's one more way you could look at this. I just want to say I personally prefer this way. But you could also do something like this, where if the temp is equal to the target, then we early return hold. Otherwise, we'll return if temp minus target is greater than 0, we'll return cool. Otherwise, we'll return heat. So think about that for a second. What's going on? If temp is less than target, that means that it won't be greater than 0. So we return heat. You know, if we have 0 here, if it's 0 degrees in the room and our target temperature is 5, this will end up being -5. That is not greater than 0, so we should heat the room. If temp is 20 degrees and our target is only 5, that means that it is 15. And so that is greater than 0. We should return cool. We need to cool down the room. Our temp is larger than our target. This is harder to reason about. It's not as readable, but it takes up even less space than our previous solution. And it's just another way to look at it. It's another possibility. When you're in a situation like this and you're comparing two numbers and you want to return a certain value based on their relation to each other, greater, less than, or equal to, this could be advantageous because it lets you early return if they're equal. Because maybe in another situation, you want to do some work before returning, and that work may affect these things. It's like, oh, if these are equal, then we don't need to do anything. We can return whatever we're returning. But if they aren't equal, that means we need to do some extra work. And that extra work might affect these variables. And then based on that extra work, based on that change, then we should return something, and that we can do that relatively concisely in one line in the return statement here. So that would be the use for this kind of thinking. And there you go. This is another possible solution. Thank you very much for watching. I wanted to take this opportunity with this really simple challenge to maybe dig a little bit deeper than most people would in explaining possibilities here. Appreciate your time and attention. If you want to like this video, if you found this helpful, if you liked my explanation, please click the like button. It'll help out my brand new channel. If you want to see more code challenge explanations and other types of programming, software development content in the future, please subscribe. Very much appreciate you, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thank you very much for watching. Talk at you later.